Older women are beautiful lovers.
All right, this is Joe Sins with Rare Elvis Photos with Ronnie McDowell. How you doing this morning?
I'm good, Joe, and it's good to be with you, brother.
Yeah, good to have you. It's funny, I was scrolling through Facebook yesterday, and
Uh-huh.
my friend Brenda Allen
Right.
had a little thing about you guys do an Elvis week, and I told my wife 2 3 days before. I said, "Did you know Ronnie McDowell is a phenomenal artist, not just a country music singer, but an artist?" And I showed her the painting that you did that you're going to have at the 90th birthday, and
Yeah.
she goes, "Wow, that looks just like Elvis." So funny thing is, I've been having these conversations with Billy Stanley, Michael Peterson, Derry Matera, and I told my wife last week, Ronnie McDowell is somebody I need to reach out to in the future and bring him on the show. And then I see it on Facebook. So tell me what you got going on this week.
Well, tonight, I'm in Nashville at a new place called the VIP Lounge at the Troubadour, Texas Troubadour. Ernest and Rodney Collins and Jennifer, they built a club right next to the Troubadour. It's called the VIP Lounge. So we're there tonight. And then Tuesday morning, I go to Memphis, which I'm going to take that painting of Elvis for his 90th birthday, and we're going to be at 1034 Audubon Drive in Memphis. And this is the house that Elvis bought for his parents. And in 1956, they lived there for 13 months. And it was his happy place. Now, the reason I'm telling you that is because they were close. They were a tight knit little family there, as opposed to Graceland. They were all separated. Elvis was upstairs in a bedroom, and but at 1034 Audubon Drive, while he lived there for 13 months, Joe, a lot of people don't know this, but he had 8 number one records.
You know I can be fast, sitting home all alone. My darling, I love you. Just hold me tight, make me thrill with delight. Well, bless my soul, what's wrong with me? I met you like, well, you do all the living I like, do all the giving, gonna love you to what may be. Oh, let it be. You teddy bear. Sing, let's rock. Everybody, let's rock. Nothing but a hound dog, crying all the time.
And from June till December, he generated, get this, 1956. Nobody knows this. You won't hear this from nobody but me. He generated over $28 million while he lived there. And the reason that I'm there is because I love that history. And Mike Curb, who literally is my boss, he just re-signed me again last year to Curb Records. And he signed me in 1984. So I've been with him since 84. But Mike Curb is as big an Elvis fan as Ronnie McDowell. And he bought that house. He said, I'm not going to let anybody disturb that house where that boy had 8 number one records in 1956. And we all know every one of those records. And when he did the Ed Sullivan show, he got on a train the last time he did it. And he hadn't even been to the house yet. They just finished it. The pool was done. But there was so many people at the station that he asked the conductor if they would stop the train before they got to the station because he wanted to go home. And so there's pictures of him, Alfred Wertheimer, who was my friend. He took pictures of Elvis walking off of that train, and Elvis got off of that train and walked all the way. It was like 30 blocks to that house, but he walked right after doing the Ed Sullivan show. 80 million people watched him. So can you imagine all the people that saw him walking down the sidewalk going to that house? Hey, ain't that Elvis right there?
But the good thing about being in Memphis is that for the most part, his people left him alone in a sense. He had his fans, but he could walk at that point in time, he could walk his 30 blocks.
Well, he did, but I will tell you this, the 13 months while they lived there, they started just in crowding that neighborhood, thousands of people. And
Yeah.
it became so chaotic that the neighbors just kept complaining. So that's why Elvis went and bought Graceland. But so much history there, and we're going to be there Tuesday night to celebrate his 90th birthday. How cool can that be?
It's awesome. And I'm going to tell everybody, all my subscribers, in the description, there's going to be links. So if you can't make it there, if you can't buy a ticket and be there with Ronnie, you can actually click on the link and you can do a virtual tour. So talk about that.
Yeah, and I'm going to take people through the house, and everybody will be amazed how many things are still there, just like they were. Um, the piano that Elvis played, there's a picture of him playing the piano. The fireplace where he took the gold lame suit picture that's on 50 million fans can't be wrong. That fireplace is still looks just like it did. And there's an ice cream like a thing that he bought, a little freezer, and he bought his own ice cream freezer and bought it, all the ice cream that he loved. It's still there in the garage where you can open it up. I don't think none of the ice cream's still there, but anyway, so
Don't want to
many.
try that ice cream.
But anyway, so I'm going to take people through the house and show them Elvis's little bedroom. And I got to spend the night there 2 times. And I actually slept in the little twin bunk that Elvis slept in. And then over on the other side of the bedroom, George Klein would spend the night with him. And George was my buddy for 40 years. Well, George said, Ronnie, at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, girls were pounding on the window, and Elvis would get up and go, hey, y'all need to leave. I got to get some rest.
Right.
And that's why he finally had to leave there. And I just love the history. So I'm going to take a virtual tour and show people the house.
That's great. And, it's funny what you're talking about doing a virtual tour and about tickets are still available, right? How many tickets are available for the actual show?
Yeah, there's only we can only get like 25 or 30 people because, it's a house and it's in the living room, but it's just so cool to be there. I'm telling you, the first time I ever went there, some young people came to my show at the Horseshoe Casino, and they came up in the autograph line and they said, hey, Ronnie, we own the Audubon House. Would you like to come and have lunch with us? And I said, you got to be kidding. So I went over there, and it was the coolest place because I'm an Elvis history fanatic. I love that early 50s Elvis history, and I wish you could have experienced that. That was 20 something years ago. Then I think they paid like $139,000 for that house, but the refrigerator, the stove, they left everything just like Gladys had it. And then Mike Kerr bought it and now students from the University of Memphis, they get to come over there and study music.
Right.
So and he bought the house to the left and to the right. And I said, and why'd you do that? He said, I didn't want anybody disturbing that house, Ronnie. So the 2 houses I bought, they watched that house for me. Is that not cool?
That's amazing, and that's such a great giving back that Mike Kerr did, because we know that without Elvis, I mean, I've written songs about it. Without Elvis, this world would not be the way it is. Music would not be the way it is. Culture would not be the way it is. Popular arts. Elvis changed everything.
He did. And if you don't believe me, ask Bruce Springsteen, ask Elton John, ask Paul McCartney. They all say the same thing that I do. He was our total inspiration, period, point blank. It's not just me, and John Lennon. He said, if there wasn't no Elvis, there wouldn't be no Beatles.
Right.
Isn't that the truth?
It is the truth. And that's what I'm saying. Sam Phillips selling the contract to RCA, he got the money that actually funded Johnny Cash more, funded Roy Orbison, funded Jerry Lee Lewis more. So, they might not have, hit it as big in a sense, even though Sun wasn't their biggest years. I mean, Jerry Lee Lewis kind of, that's his most popular music. But, just everything that Elvis, from the point Elvis came out, the world changed. Everything changed. And in fact, I've got a lyric in one of my songs that, he took the racist world and changed them. He really did, because he brought it in to where it was acceptable to like black culture, black music. Even the people, once again, we don't really talk about too controversial stuff, but it was very racist in the 50s and it was racist in the 60s. And he didn't tolerate that.
No, you know what? And he took Little Richard's wop babaloo bop a wop bam boom. He took Little Richard's songs, Chuck Berry's songs, Ivy Joe Hunter, Shake, Rattle, and Roll. He sang these songs on national television. Well, guess
Yeah.
what? If I'd written Shake, Rattle, and Roll, and this young boy got up on television, which was brand new at the time, and people don't realize Elvis, look what he did for Little Richard and
Yeah.
Chuck Berry and Ivy Joe Hunter and all the wonderful black musicians that wrote those songs. He opened those songs up to an audience that they never heard those before. And trust you me, Little Richard and Fats Domino, when he got elected into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, this is a God's truth. I was watching it that night, and he said, I wish Elvis was here. That was
Yeah.
Fats Domino.
That's amazing, and those are great artists. That you just mentioned
Yeah,
there, and they were already making great music, but he kicked the door wide open for
he
them
did.
to have more recognition, and he made them money because singing their songs, they made money because they were songwriters.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, Joe, my sister, Linda Sue, well, we call her Tootie because she loved Little Richard's Tutti Frutti. So that's all we know her by is Tootie.
Right.
So Tootie would go to Randy's record shop in Gallatin, which was the place owned by Randy Woods, who started Dot Records. But anyway, she would go down there in the 50s and bring all these records home. So one day she brought this record home. It's called Hound Dog and Don't Be Cruel. And my mother, she was getting ready to go to work. She come in there and took that needle off of that little box record player, and she said, "You ain't gonna listen to that again. You've listened to that Hound Dog song enough." Well, when she left and got in the cab, I turned the big old '78 record over, and it was
Mm-hmm.
"Don't Be Cruel," and I ain't been the same since. And that's
that's
the God's truth.
that's amazing. Hey, you talked about Almond Drive, and I know you've gone down and visited June Wanico, but we're reading the book right now on the channel. June is one of my favorite people that's ever been involved with Elvis, and I know it was a short period of time, but tell us just for a second about how her eyeballs, how her eyes look when she talks about Elvis. I'm sure she still lights up about
Well,
Elvis.
I was working at the Beau Rivage uh, down in Gulf Shores.
Mm-hmm.
And these people wanted to go up to the steakhouse. Well, I don't eat cows and I don't eat pigs. But anyway, I said, no, I don't eat that stuff. And they said, well, they probably got chicken. And so what we went up, and here's this older lady. She was the hostess. She was standing behind this little podium. And I looked at her and I said, how you doing, ma'am? She said, I'm fine. And I looked at her nameplate and it said June. I I don't know how in the world, just out of the blue, I said, uh, you wouldn't happen to be June Wanico, would you? And she goes, Ronnie, that's who I am. And I said, you've got to be kidding me. So from that moment right there, she and I bonded till this day. You would not believe she was with Elvis for 2 years. A lot of people don't know that. She slept at the Audubon House. She stayed with Elvis and Gladys and Vernon there. And she was there that night when Colonel Tom called and said, Elvis, you're going to be on the Ed Sullivan show. And Elvis said, June, I want you to go to New York with me. And she said, Elvis, I've been with you for 2 years. I got to go home see my mama. And so she went back to Mississippi and she said, Ronnie, I never heard from him for 2 months. I'd go to the drugstore and I'd see these magazines and he'd have two girls under each arm. And she said, finally, he called me and said, June, I'm coming in to Biloxi and I want you to come with me to Memphis. I want to show you something. You know what that was? He was going to show her Graceland. He had just bought it. And she wouldn't go. She said, no, Elvis, I've got me a new boyfriend. And he was devastated. But she said, Ronnie, I hadn't heard from him in 2 months. But one time, June grabbed me and kissed me. And, she's a lot older than me. But anyway, she grabbed me and kissed me. I said, June, no wonder that boy liked you.
Well, I mean, she talked about how they just kissed and kissed and kissed and kissed all night long till 5 o'clock in the morning.
Oh,
So
I
yeah,
know.
she likes to kiss, that's for sure.
Oh, she told me stories. Of course, I can't tell you, but anyway, she told me
Okay.
some interesting stories about her and Elvis.
Yeah, well, it's a wonderful piece of history. Of course, we've
Yeah,
all seen the footage of them, out on the river and stuff, and with
yeah.
But yeah. So before we get too much further into this, because we're going to talk more, I want to let everybody know if you're a subscriber and you happen to buy a ticket to the show coming up for Elvis Week, whether it's in person or whether it is the virtual. We've been reading Billy Stanley's The Faith of Elvis, and we've had Billy Stanley on here for about 4 weeks straight talking about Elvis. And Billy sent one extra book because we did a giveaway at Christmas time, but he sent one extra book that's signed. So if you can send me a picture of a ticket or just a receipt that you're going to Ronnie's show virtually or in person, you're going to get this.
Well, how nice, man. That's nice, Joe, of you to do that. And I want to tell you, yesterday I called one of my best friends in the whole wide world. And in 1955, he was at Colonel Tom's house, which is only about 4 miles from where I live up in Madison.
Mm-hmm.
And Hank Snow was there that day. Well, Jimmy Snow, who is 90 years old. And Colonel Tom Parker said, son, now you're on the show tonight with this new kid down in Lubbock. He said, I want you to take this envelope and you give him this envelope. And he said, now your dad, he's not going to get there till 5 o'clock. You're going to get there at 2. You take this and give it to him. And Jimmy said, Ronnie, I didn't even know who this guy was. And I walked into the dressing room at the Coliseum, and he was standing there in the mirror combing his hair. And he said, I walked up to him, and he turned around, and I said, and Jimmy goes, hey, man, are you wearing eye makeup? And Elvis goes, yeah, man, brings my eyes out. And Jimmy said that night, he said, in the dressing room, before I tell you this, he said there was 2 young boys. And he just kept saying, man, can we just do 2 songs to open up for y'all tonight? And Jimmy said, well, I don't care. Elvis, do you care? And Elvis goes, no, man, I don't care. They did 2 songs. You know who those 2 boys were? Buddy Holly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that was okay. So there was talk that Buddy had played a show, but there was nothing in history that ever really documented it. But so that's good to hear that Jimmy said that. Huh? Okay.
Oh yeah, and Jimmy, he said that night, he said my dad went on and he had the biggest song in the world at the time. That a big 8-wheel rolling down the track says my true loving daddy ain't a coming. We all know that song.
I'm moving on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, Jimmy said all the girls were screaming, we want Elvis, we want Elvis. And now I'm going to tell you what happened. And Jimmy said, Elvis, we're in trouble. They was backstage and Elvis said, yeah, man, I hate this. I love you, Daddy. He said, I hate this. And Jimmy goes, no, Elvis, we're really in trouble. And Elvis goes, what do you mean, man? He said, well, my dad will say anything to anybody, anywhere. Well, let me just tell you this, right in the middle of that song, #1 record, he stopped and he goes, well, if you'll just let me finish this number, the little bastard will come out and sing you another song.
Oh, man.
But anyway, Jimmy said the next day, Ronnie, I started wearing eye makeup.
Yeah. I mean, heck, if it worked for Elvis, he figured it would work for him.
Right.
And I just saw something the other day that Jimmy Snow talked about how Elvis, I believe it's in the Elvis and Gladys book that documents that Elvis hitchhiked 250 miles to go down to the Meridian, Mississippi.
He did,
Jimmy
yeah.
Rogers. And Jimmy talked about how, I guess he verified that Elvis did go there in 53 just to do a talent show.
Well, he did, but in 55, him and Jimmy were there.
Yes.
And they're sitting on the hood in this parade. And Elvis had a camera. You can go look at it. Jimmy Snow and Elvis, Meridian, Mississippi. And Jimmy said, Ronnie, if you look at those pictures and look at the crowd, not one person was looking at Elvis Presley. That was 1955. He said, do you think that boy could have sat on the hood of that Cadillac the next year? He said they would have tore him to pieces.
I know.
But exposure, it's down to one word, exposure. When he did the Dorsey shows, Steve Allen, it was all over but the crying.
Well, there was nothing on TV except those popular shows, and TV was only on a certain amount of time. So the fact that Elvis on the Ed Sullivan Show showed up to 80 million people in 56.
Right.
I mean, gosh, at that point in time, what was there, 150 million people in the U.S.?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So 3/4 of the country was watching Elvis that night.
Yes.
And that was February of 56. I hadn't even started the first grade. And Tootie, my sister, again, She said, you know that boy I've been bringing those records home? I said, which one? You bring a lot of records home. She said, that Elvis Presley guy. I said, yeah, what about? She said, well, he's on the Dorsey shows tonight. I said, really? She said, yeah, all the kids at school, they don't watch it because it's big band. But last week he was on there and it was unbelievable. But he's on there again tonight. So here, Joe, now this is the truth. I'm sitting there watching this little bitty black and white TV. And when he came on in my little brain, 6-year-old brain, and I'm all boy, trust me, I'm all boy. But Elvis came on and I looked at my sister and I said, Tootie, that guy's too pretty to be a guy. That's what I said.
Well, he was the best looking guy in the world. He really was.
Yeah.
Really, the thing is, that's one of those things. You take a look at his early pictures as a little kid, and you wouldn't think he was going to grow up to look the way he did.
I don't know. He was a good looking little kid too.
Well, that too. But I think there was a picture I showed the other day on my channel where he was maybe 8 or 9.
Yeah.
And we all have something that when we're growing up that's a little awkward sometimes about us. We're growing into our face and our body.
Yeah.
But for sure, I mean, Elvis Presley was the best looking guy that's ever existed in popular culture.
Yeah. Well, I always tell everybody. And by the way, that's a new painting that me and my young son Tyler did of James Burton, which is behind us, life size. And James signed this. And when I gave him a copy. And when I gave him his copy, he cried. He said, Ronnie, I can't believe how pretty you made me. He said, you even got me a real pretty set of hair. He said, I
haven't seen that hair in about 30, 40 years.
He said, you made me look so pretty. I said,
well, you know what? You're an amazing artist. I'll tell you what. I mean, like I said, that's one of the unknown things, unless you're a big Ronnie McDowell fan and you've grown up with Ronnie McDowell, which there's plenty of people that are out there that are big fans of you. But if somebody's just a casual fan that goes, oh, I know Ronnie McDowell. He did the voice of Elvis, and the King is gone. And
a lot, not to interrupt, but a lot of them go, oh, yeah, he's that Elvis impersonator. I'm like, I ain't no Elvis impersonator. I'm the guy that sang Older Women.
Yes.
And Watching Girls Go By. And you're going to ruin my bad reputation. I'm the guy that did that. And if you listen to those records, that's just Ronnie McDowell.
Yeah. You don't sound like Elvis in those records. You sound like Ron. Yeah. But the casual fan wouldn't know what a phenomenal artist you are. I mean, the likeness that you can do. Because that's one of those things where I'm great at drawing stick figures. And I could draw a house in the middle of the desert that looks like a square. And I can draw a little. But, artistry, your artistry, the fact that you can visually, conceptually put it onto canvas, it's just amazing that you have dual talents.
Well, thank you. I think it's the right side of the brain. It's the arts and the entertainment side of the brain. Mm-hmm. My friend Steve Warner, unbelievable artist. Tony Bennett was an artist. So, a lot of singers and entertainers, they can paint. But my hero is Norman Rockwell.
Okay.
And Thomas Kincaid, Michelangelo, and the list goes. I have a lot of heroes in the art.
Little guys. Those are just little guys you're talking about.
And Leonardo da Vinci. I mean, but Norman Rockwell, he painted life as we see it, and I love when I do my paintings. I want it like the new Elvis painting for his 90th birthday. If you could see that in person, I swear he looks like he's going to talk to you. And that's what I love, making things look like life.
Yeah, and that's one. I kind of interpret that. When I look at my own artistry as a songwriter, sometimes I write a song, and when I get done with it, I get emotional hearing it because you're bringing it to life, just like you're bringing the canvas and the people and life back to life. In a sense, you drew James Burton at a point in time where he's not that age anymore. You drew Elvis at a certain point in time where obviously Elvis has gone to his great reward. And so you're bringing life back to something that doesn't exist. That moment in time did not exist until you paint it again. And you're bringing it back to the people. And I think that's just a phenomenal thing.
Well, thank you. And I love the 50s. Me and George Klein, like I told you, we were buddies for 40 years, and that was Elvis's best friend. I don't care what anybody says. George never asked Elvis for nothing. And that's why Elvis loved him. But George said, Ronnie, in 1947, he said Elvis came walking into Humes Junior High. He said he had his guitar with him. And the teacher said, "Now, kids, this is Elvis Presley. He's from Tupelo, and he's going to be with us." And she said, "Elvis, I noticed you got your guitar. Do you play that?" He goes, "Yes, ma'am." And she said, "Do you sing?" He goes, "Yes, ma'am." She said, "Would you sing us a song?" Well, he sang "Old Shep." And
Hmm.
George said, every time the teacher would ask him, he brought the guitar every day. He would sing "Old Shep." And George, he was class president. George Klein was, and he finally went up to him and he said, "Hey, man, don't you know another damn song?"
Elvis stuck with what worked, right? I mean, old Shep would get the girls crying. He would get the boys remembering their pet dogs, and yeah, that's funny. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a true story. And George told me, I worked with the Jordanaires. They were on my first records. Gordon Stoker, all the original Jordanaires. That's why I'm so blessed because I got to work with Hank Snow, and I got to work with Marty Robbins and Ernest Tubb, and all the people that I grew up listening to. They're all gone now, and that's why I tell everybody I came along at just the precise right amount of time, because the second show I ever did after the King is gone, a song I wrote about Elvis, was with George Jones and with the Gatlins. Well, and Tammy Wynette. Well, I love all them, but I was so excited because I was the world's biggest George Jones freak. Well, he didn't show up. Tammy walked out and said, "Well, I hate to tell y'all, I was so disappointed." And she said, "But George is down at a little bar having a drink or two." So the next morning, I get on a plane to go to Atlanta with Kenny Rogers. And guess who was sitting at the back of the plane? George. And I walked back there and I said, "Hey, George, where was you at last night?" And he goes, "Sit down, son." And, and Joe, me and him bonded right there till he died.
That's a great story. It reminds me, you probably knew my music manager, Merle Kilgore.
Oh,
He managed,
Lord, yeah.
yeah, he was my manager, my publisher. I had an office with him and I spent Thanksgivings, Christmases, Easters with him and Judy and his family out there in Paris for years. But I also was, at the same time, I was good friends with Vern Gosdin. Vern
Yeah.
Gosdin and I wrote songs together. And if you know Vern, he was a tough old guy that
Yes.
sometimes was kind and sometimes he was rowdy. And we got on a bus to go to Music Valley to go see George Jones. George Jones was playing a show in the middle of Music Valley, right? Where the Texas Troubadour Theater is,
Yeah.
and he was stumping for a politician, and I was going to meet George Jones for the first time, and this was exciting. Of course, Vern said, "All right, son, here's his bus. Let's go up and meet him." And let me just a little background. I'm a clean cut guy, doesn't drink. At least I didn't drink it all back then. Didn't smoke, nothing. So we opened the tour bus, and the clouds are so thick coming off that bus, Ronnie, that I
I
took
know.
one step on there, and it almost like knocked me back. And I hate the fact that I missed the opportunity to spend a little bit of time with George because I was too afraid to go up into a cloudy atmosphere. Um, but um, but George came off. He did an amazing show,
Sure.
um, and one of my heroes too, being a country music singer, is George Jones. I mean, Johnny Cash, of course, and
Yeah.
Vern Gosdin was a phenomenal singer. But I didn't know nothing about Vern when I got to Nashville in 1996. And this is a town. There's a lot of dreamers that are out here on this channel that wanted to be a singer, that wanted to have some level of success. Maybe that's still trying. And like you said, the right time at the right place, the right
Right.
situations is a big part of it in this lifetime. You
Oh,
know.
yeah. Timing is everything. And I really think fate is a hunter and it will find you. When Elvis died, I never laid eyes on him. But that afternoon, when I turned the radio on, and this DJ goes, "Elvis Presley has died." Well, I was in Nashville over by Metro Center. It's not there anymore. And I was on the interstate, and it was 2:22 in the afternoon. Now the reason I know that because that's my number, 222. I
Hmm,
see it. I see it all the time.
that's funny.
So anyway, before I got to Bowling Green to do my gig that night, and we had just rehearsed, I did with my band, and I said, "Boys, now I know Elvis has this Moody Blue out, but I want to learn an old Elvis song." So we learned "Return to Cinder," which is ironic. So, and when the DJ said that Elvis had died, I started going like this. But I was a songwriter. I'd been a songwriter for 5 years. I wrote songs for everybody. And and so I started going out of my soul, not my heart. It is poured out of my soul. I was barely 6 years old when I first heard him sing. And somehow I knew from that moment on, it'd be a lifetime thing. Every bit of that. And little did I know my life was like that. In 1 week, it was turned upside down. It sold 1 million records in 1 week. It was crazy. And that's why I wound up on that show with George Jones up in Peoria, Illinois, because of
Yeah.
that song.
Well, Elvis was looking down. I think that's one thing that I know Elvis appreciated other artists. He appreciated other musicians, and he would always prop them up in the concerts. He'd bring his background singers out to sing as
Oh yeah.
and the thing is, it was Elvis looking out for you, as in my opinion.
And I believe that because I flew down to Memphis the next day and I said, well, I never saw Elvis alive. I'm going to go down and see him lying in state. So I got there at 8:30, Joe, in the morning in my Camaro, 77 Camaro that me and the bank owned. You know how that goes.
Yeah.
But anyway, I got there at 8:30. How in the world I did this, I don't know. But I got to the gate about a little before 4 o'clock. How I stood there that long, you'd have had to have been there. It was the craziest thing I've ever seen. It was August, hot.
Yeah.
People were fainting, and but I got 10 feet from the gate, and they shut it. I didn't get in. So my friend up in Baltimore, who I just got off the phone with, Steve Jeppy, he said, "Let me tell you what happened to you." He said, "It was not meant for you to walk up that driveway." He said, "That would have taken you 2 hours." I said, "Well, never thought about that." He said, "Fate plucked you out of that crowd, sent you back to Scorpion Records. Who was standing there?" I said, "Lee Morgan." He said, and Lee goes, when I walked in there, Joe, he goes, "Hey, Ronnie, let's do a tribute to Elvis." And I said, "Man, I ain't wearing no jumpsuit." He said, "That ain't what I'm talking about. Listen to this song I wrote." And I listened to it and I said, "Well, man, listen to what I wrote." And what we did, we put that talking part that I wrote with his singing part. We went in the next night. And here's the irony of all this. Tell me fate is not a hunter. It found me. We went into Scotty Moore's studio and recorded The King Is Gone. I didn't know that was Scotty Moore's place. And then the next day, I took that tape. And by the way, I wrote a hot check for that, $2,700. You know how much that was back in '77?
Oh gosh, that would have been about 8,000, maybe
Yeah,
9.
yeah. So anyway, I didn't sleep a wink. And I had that little old box tape with me, and I was sitting on the steps of Monument Studio, which is still there, the same iron steps. And here comes Gail. Well, I've been working with Gail for 3 or 4 years getting acetates made. Well, guess who Gail's boyfriend was? Scotty Moore. She never told me that. Where's the irony in that?
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah, and she said, "Ronnie, what are you doing here?" And I said, "Gail, I got a hit." Well, I didn't know if I had a hit. She said, "What do you want?" And I said, "I want 8 acetates." Why I wanted 8, I don't know. But I left there with those, and I went to Weno Radio in Madison, 1 mile from Colonel Tom Parker's house. And I said, "Would y'all play this?" And she goes, "Well, we don't do that off the street." And I said, "Well, it's about Elvis." She said, "Well, hold on a minute." She took it back to the DJ where there was a glass and I could see him. He listened to a little of it, and then he goes like this, "Come here." I went back there and he said, "Stand right here. I'm going to see if you get any reaction. I'm going to play this." And I said, "You are?" He said, "Yeah." Well, he played that. And when it got about that much into that record, all of his phone lines lit up. And he goes, "Damn, something's wrong with my phones." And he goes, "Okay, okay." He said, "Man, this song ain't even over. They want to keep." He had to play it for 3 solid hours.
Oh,
And
that's great.
it just exploded off of that little AM radio station.
I tell you what, that's amazing. And once again, it's fate. But
Yep.
it's also the timing. Gosh, you couldn't take anything in any radio station now, except for some of the B
Oh,
stations,
no.
and get
No.
anything played. I mean, that's
No.
kind of where my wife and I in 2013, we had a number 49 and number 28 song, which was nice on the Music Row breakout charts, but it was funded by me. We didn't have a label. Kent Wells, Dolly's producer, I'm sure you know
Yeah.
Kent.
Yeah.
He cut our records for free because he's always loved my singing, and he would bring me in and say, "Damn, why don't you have a deal, Joe? You could sing a song on one take and it's perfect." So he cut records on us for free. And
Oh,
so
cool.
that helped my wife and I. But the thing is, fate is a strange thing, and fame is a strange thing. I always talk to the folks on my channel that I'm glad, in a sense, I'm really glad that we didn't become super famous because there's so much pressure when you get that super fame, and it takes you away. Sometimes it can take you away from your family. Now, your son drums,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Ryan Dean's my drummer, and then
Yeah.
Tyler helps me with the art, but he signed with Curb Records when he was
Wh-
9 years old.
Which is great. You found a
Yeah,
way to keep your family together during music. Now, my wife and I, we went on the road and we were I don't know, it was 31 straight days on a road, some 1,000 miles a day, 500 miles a day, and we just wanted to stay home and write music and play music and stuff and play casinos, but fame does allow you to reach people, and so that's the part of me as an artist that I've always having this channel. I mean, I've got the number one Elvis channel in the last year and a half by far, 62,000 subscribers in a year
wow,
and a half.
I
I
love
get I
that.
get 50 to 100 a day. But I'm also, everybody knows I talk to them, I communicate with them, I sing. I've got another channel that's called Elvis and the Legends where I sing Elvis stuff, and that's part of my career. But like you're a country singer, so am
Yeah,
I. When you hear my stuff, and my releases and stuff sounds nothing like Elvis, but then I can sound like Elvis,
yeah,
because I've got a love. Elvis Presley is the reason why I'm a singer and why I'm a guitar player. And
right.
when I was 2 years old is when Elvis died in '77, and my family said
Wow.
that when I found out he died because my mom was upset.
Yeah.
I was inconsolable for 3, 4 straight solid hours, and I can remember an emotional against the wall crying. Now, people say you can't remember it when you're 2 years old, and maybe it's some other memory that I'm thinking of. But they said I cried for three or four straight hours in the corner against the wall, and I would not come away from it. And so, growing up, I mean, Elvis Presley kept me, centered. I was the poorest kid in California, pretty much. I ate food out of the dump. All my clothes were from the dump, but it made me do great things in a sense. I mean, I've done the most stuff of anybody from my hometown by far. And it's because of Elvis Presley and having something that Elvis had a great soul. And when he sang to you, he could heal you.
Oh yeah.
And that's
Oh yeah.
that's the part that that really lifts people up on my channel. Everybody's got a story. You've got a story. I mean, you had to be inspired to write "The King Is Gone" because you were torn up.
Well, I was, but I got to tell you, when I first heard and saw Elvis, I was I worked with Conway Twitty for 8 years. He was not only my icon, but he was like my dad. And one day we were going to Louisville, play the Louisville Gardens, and he always wanted me to ride with him on his bus. And he was sitting there. He said, "I see where you're going to be on the Ralph Emery show Monday." I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "Well, here's what you need to know. Conway Twitty had the best philosophies of any human I've ever known." He goes, "Well, when that red light comes on, they're going to know who you are." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "The camera bears your soul." And so then, as soon as he said that, I went, "Wow." So the whole world, when they saw Elvis, they saw who he was. And I swear, because Joe, think about this. When you see some of those politicians, I ain't gonna mention no names, but when you see them, it's like Dracula going by a mirror. Ooh.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. Oh yeah.
the camera does bear your soul. And Conway again had the best philosophies. And he told me he got to meet Elvis in Vegas, and he said, "Ronnie, when I went there, he said, that night Frank Sinatra was there, Burt Lancaster, Gregory Peck, Glenn Mill. They
Hmm.
all wanted to meet Elvis." And he said, Elvis came out of the room where all those movie stars were. And he said, "Hey, Conway, really nice to meet you." And he said, "Let's sit down here in the hall." And Conway said, "Huh?" So him and Elvis sat down in the hallway on the floor. And he said, "Conway, I'm going to be honest with you." He said, "Me and you both from Mississippi." He said, "I know where you're from, Friars Point, Mississippi. Your dad was a riverboat captain, wasn't he?" And Conway goes, "How the hell do you know that, Elvis?" And he goes, "When I got out of the Army and I got to Graceland, the first record I wanted on my jukebox was It's Only Make Believe."
Yeah.
And Conway goes, "You have my record on your jukebox?" And he said, "That's my favorite record in 1958. And Conway said, "Well, I'm just going to be honest with you, Elvis. I was trying to sound a lot like you. If you listen
Sure.
to it, he did.
Oh yeah. The thing is, imitation's the greatest form of flattery.
It
And I
is, yeah,
and I love you brought up Conway Twitty. I mean, my wife's two favorite country singers are Conway Twitty
yeah.
and Keith Whitley. And I don't know whether Mike Shrimp is still alive or not.
Oh yeah, I still
Okay.
record with him.
Well,
Yeah,
good. Well, Mike Shrimp cut my first demo. Him and the guy from the Electric Flying Brothers guitar player. I can't remember what his name was. He passed away, but he told me some great stories about Conway and how
yeah.
Conway took care of him. Or I think his wife had cancer, and Conway Twitty paid for all the medical bills. And paid for the salary for Mike, and Mike didn't have to go play on the road to take care of his wife. So I love hearing the great stories of the great heart of artists and the things they've done that's not publicized.
Well, Conway told me this, and I've never forgot this. And I'm telling you again, had the best philosophies. And he said, now, Ronnie, I wrote the perfect song for this business. I said, what's that? And he said, it's only make believe. He said, when that curtain comes down and the ham claps go away, he said, what do you do? I said, what do you mean? He said, you go home, take the garbage out, don't you? He said, it's only make believe. And don't you forget that. It is so superficial.
Oh, yeah.
Me and him was in Buffalo, New York, and he had 20,000 people. He was the hottest singer in the world in 1980 when I was with him. And we were standing in a parking lot, and here comes these two girls screaming to the top of their lungs. They got right up to us, and Conway said, stop that. That is absolutely ridiculous, y'all acting like that. But
Oh,
that's who he was, though. He was just down to earth. And
yeah.
if you think about it, Joe, it is superficial,
Oh, it
and
is.
it is only make believe, but you have to put your perspective where it should be and your priorities.
Yeah.
Where I put it with my youngins, and
Yeah.
that's the truth.
That's it, and that's great. Of course, without the fans, and Elvis understood that, an artist would be nothing. And so it's difficult because there's people that get so emotional. Everybody is has a certain place in their life at
Yeah.
18, at 25, at 40, and sometimes you just have those uncontrollable emotions that are attached to a song, to a look, to an artist. And gosh, those poor girls, they were doing what they were emotionally drawn to do, which was be excited over somebody they absolutely loved.
Yeah, I
Um,
know.
but at the same time, I appreciate that because just like Elvis said on stage, "Hey, thank you. There's only one king, and that's Christ." Which
Yeah,
is when
yeah.
Elvis signed. I know I wrote a song about that. My channel loves it called "There's Only One King, that's Jesus." Set Elvis up on stage because put it into perspective who Elvis was. He was a boy who loved his mom.
Yes.
He was somebody that so deeply wanted to get out of poverty. He grew
Right.
up in deep poverty, like I grew up in deep poverty, and there was a desire to get the heck out of it. And that's part of who he was. But then he was really always a Southern boy who loved God, who respected elders, um, and so
He was. I totally agree. But the thing of it is, he let he if he had Conway's philosophy,
mhm,
he let the business get to him, and it literally killed him.
yeah,
Because Colonel Tom Parker, all that stupidity, the way he was doing him, making him work, 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 work. And Conway always told me this. He said, "You want to do this a long time?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Work on the weekends, stay at home during the week." And that's what I've always done. And I still, I can't hit some of the notes I used to hit, but I still basically can sing, my songs, as opposed to Wayne Newton, who can't even talk,
right,
you know,
because they're
be,
playing so many shows. That's the thing when you
just
do 2 shows a night.
right.
Yeah, and,
But
and back to the point about Elvis. There, you're right in a lot of ways, but at the same time, Elvis spent so much money to take care of all of his people around him. So
I
much he
know.
gave so much money away. I'm sure he gave at least 10 to 15 to 20% of the money away because he tithed with his generosity. So
Well,
Elvis, in a sense, had no choice but to work all the time. He did the films because they were easy money. But at the same time, you're right. That did the trap he kind of put himself into, kind of killed him. And Colonel Parker, I mean, I've got
if I,
mixed feelings about Colonel.
well, I do too, and I met him one time, the only time I met him in Vegas, but that's another story. But anyway, Elvis, if I could have talked to him, I would have talked to him like I'm talking to you, like I talked to Conway and George Jones, who was of anybody. I'm not starstruck. I used to be when I was a
Yes, yeah.
kid, But I used to be when I was a kid, but I'm not anymore. I could talk to Donald Trump like I'm talking to you.
Right.
But anyway, he just, let the business get to him. And I would have said, Elvis, man, if you keep your life simple, you'll be happy. That's what I would have said to him, because there's so much beauty in simplicity. And when I did that duet with Dolly Parton, I'm going to tell you how grounded she is. Now, she's all business, but Dolly, I'm on Dolly's new rock star album. I don't know if you know that or not.
I don't. That's great to know. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, Dolly called me and she goes, and it just went gold, just went platinum, and I got my check a month ago.
Congrats.
But now I wouldn't have got it if it wasn't for Dolly Parton, because she made sure Fleetwood Mac, Elton John. But anyway, they called me and said, Ronnie, did you ever in your life dream you'd be on an album with a Beatle? And I said, well, I never thought I'd be on your album. She said, well, we're track 28. Paul McCartney's track 27. Guess who track 29 is? I said, I don't have a clue. Judas Priest.
Oh, God.
But anyway, so when we did the duet, I walked out of there and she was telling me the story about she wanted Elvis to sing I Will Always Love You. He wanted to do it. But Colonel Tom said, no, not unless we get to publishing. She said, Ronnie, what if I'd give them my publishing? She said, that's the biggest copyright of my life. Whitney Houston did it. And I said, I get it. So anyway, I painted a picture of her and Elvis on a picnic, and she's singing I Will Always Love You to Elvis. And when I gave her that painting, she goes, Ronnie, look at us. She said, if I was on a picnic with him, that's exactly how I would have dressed too. You'd have to see the painting. But anyway, I said, Dolly, I want to sell prints. She said, Ronnie, you sell all the prints you want to for the rest of your life. You don't have to ask nobody nothing. How grounded and humble is that?
That's wonderful. Because there'll be a lot of artists that say, "Well, talk to my management."
Oh yeah.
And let's do a deal. But she said, "Sell as many as you want." That's great.
And you know who else told me that? Same thing. When I did that painting of George Jones, he called me and said, Ronnie, I want you to paint a picture of me getting a DUI on my lawnmower. I said, George, what a great idea for a painting. I already see it. So he called me up October and asked me that. Christmas Day, he called me up and he goes, son, you got my painting done? I said, yes, sir. And he said, bring it over. I said, well, George, it's Christmas Day. And he said, George is calling me. Hey, Joe, sorry, somebody called in. I apologize.
No worries. Hey, and the funny thing was, you were talking about George Jones, and then George was calling you. And I was like, is George Jones calling from the great beyond? Yeah.
Isn't that funny? But anyway, George, I'll get back to that. He stared at that painting for an hour or so, just every angle. He goes, son, what do I have to sign? I said, George, you don't have to sign nothing. I just want to sell prints. He said, son, you sell all the prints you want to rest of your life. So both of those two iconic people told me the same thing. And that just shows you, how humble and grounded both of them are. And thank God for Dolly Parton putting me, my silly self, on a rock star album with Fleetwood Mac and Leonard Skinner. What the?
That's amazing. But you know what? That's somebody that has the power to help other people. Not that you couldn't put. We know how expensive it is. First off, to put a record out, and not just that, to get anything on the radio. I mean, gosh, I know firsthand, just from myself, I didn't have a record label or an investor paying, all the record promoters out there. I paid record promoters out of my pocket to the tune of about $160,000. But we got top 30 with no label against major artists. And so for me, I never have to put another song out because I know that with the money that it takes this day, about $1 million a song, I could definitely have number ones. But I don't want it. God doesn't need me to have it. He wants me to be with my family. He wants me to write songs and do this Elvis channel and talk to folks like you, who are deserving to have your story continue to be told to a new generation.
Well, I appreciate it, Joe. And I tell you what, I've really enjoyed talking with you. I hope I haven't wore your ears out. Not long ago, I did the Ray Stevens show, and the producer grabbed my arm before I went out there. And Ray was sitting like Johnny Carson behind a desk. And the producer said, Ronnie, would you please talk to Ray? We can't get nobody to talk to him. I said, man, I ain't got no problem with that. So halfway through the interview, now the place was packed. It was live on TV. Halfway through the interview, Ray goes, you sure do talk a lot. I said, well, Ray, your producer told me to talk to you a lot, want to come out here. And Ray goes, yeah, but you talk a lot.
It's just wonderful. Yeah. No, that's great. I mean, when you're doing podcasts like this, I mean, like we've had a nice easy flow. There's, I mean, we could stop at any point in time, and people like they could have talked for another 5 hours. And that's the thing is if you can talk to somebody and listen and share stories, people enjoy it, and the channel really loves these conversations, and they're going to love this. And hopefully, I can bring you on to do some more because you've got more, much more. I can see you're a Vietnam veteran, and I want to talk about that in future shows. I mean, you have a YouTube channel too, right?
Yes.
You just started. You just started. You've had it for a while.
Yeah. It's Facebook. Yeah, we stream, every Friday and Saturday. Like tonight, we'll be streaming from the VIP lounge at the Troubadour.
Okay.
And we streamed last night, and it's become like a TV show because we reach people all over the world. It's really cool.
That's amazing. And I'm gonna get Debbie to give me the links to that so I can put it in the description. But when you say all over the world, this channel is 61% US and 39% worldwide. So we've got 5% of the subscribers in Australia, 9% are in the UK. We got Mexico, South America, Denmark, Sweden. It's amazing. Elvis is loved everywhere.
Yeah.
And so you're going to be you're going to be on the channel forever. This is going to be the first conversation with Ronnie McDowell. And so people are going to be reintroduced to you, because this is a busy world. We forget.
Oh, I know.
We forget lots of people that we like. I mean, I'm an artist, and I love artists, that I haven't listened to in a while. I go, gosh, I haven't heard this record. And so people are going to be reintroduced to Ronnie McDowell, and you're going to find new fans as well, which you deserve to have them.
Well, thank you, Joe. But I sure appreciate you talking to me today, and I appreciate you advertising. For Elvis's birthday Wednesday, be 90 years young. I'm not going to say old because I tell everybody this is the only guy that it doesn't matter who it is. John Tesh on Entertainment Tonight years and years ago, he said, well, I'm just going to tell y'all there are stars and there are stars. And all of a sudden behind him, this great big picture of Elvis pulled up behind him, and he goes, and then there's Elvis. And so that just put it all in perspective, doesn't it? I mean, this guy's on a first name business basic with the world. It's crazy because I live next to this guy that ran a Texaco service. He's from Iraq. His name was Jimmy, but his name was not really Jimmy. But he and I became good friends, and I went over there one day. He was from Turkey. I said, Jimmy, I said, now, when you were growing up in Turkey, who'd you listen to? He goes, Elvis. I said, what? He said, Ronnie, when Elvis died, we all cried. I said, in Turkey? What does that tell you? And here's what I want to tell the world. This is a God's truth. I don't care who it is, Elizabeth Taylor, Rock Hudson, and I hate to say this, Loretta Lynn, after my friend Loretta Lynn passed away, you didn't hear nothing, but Elvis, he just keeps going and going. He's like the Energizer Bunny. And I don't know after all the baby boomers leave, but let me put this in put this in perspective. I was at Chick-fil-A the other day. This 19-year-old girl was waiting on me. I had my phone out, and I had Barney Fife as my phone picture. I said, y'all know who this is? And they go, no. I said, you don't know who Barney Fife is? They said, no, we've never seen that face. And I said, that's Americana, Barney Fife. And I said, okay, do you know who this is? And I pulled up my new Uber driver, Elvis, that's now hanging over the couch at the Ottoman Drive. It's my favorite Elvis painting up to the one I just did. I said, you know who this is? And both of them goes, well, that's Elvis. Who don't know who that is? Right. She was 17.
Yeah, see, and I think his legacy is safe with that because I'm finding the same thing. Brand new now. The Elvis movie that came out with Baz Luhrmann, I liked it, but at the same time, I thought it was a little too dark, a little too depressive myself for my own taste. But it was very, very successful. And then a
I,
newer generation got to be introduced to Elvis. So I don't think, I think 25, 30, 40, 50 years from now, I don't think he's going to be any smaller. I'll be honest. I mean, because of that.
I don't either. And I walked out of that movie. Me and Tyler, we went to see it. And as soon as I got in my car, my phone rang. It was Jerry Schilling. And I said, Jerry, funny you should call. And he goes, Ronnie, did you go see that movie? I said, Jerry, that's weird. You're calling me. I just left the movie. He said, what'd you think, Ronnie? I said, Jerry, you want me to be honest with you? He said, yeah. I said, I loved it. I said, I know the history was not totally correct because I know everything about Elvis. I said, but I loved it. And I thought that boy did such an unbelievable job. Now, I will say this. The one that I did with Kurt Russell in 78, where I did 38 songs in that movie, to this day, nobody's going to beat Kurt Russell's Elvis. They're
Yeah,
just
he did
not.
a phenomenal job. He did.
Yeah. And everywhere I go, Priscilla called me after that, and that's how I got to know her. She said, Ronnie, I'm doing a movie about my number one book, Elvis and Me. I said, yeah, I just read it. She goes, you read my book? And I said, of course I did. She said, well, I want you to be Elvis's voice in this movie I'm doing. And so I did 36 songs in that movie, being Elvis's voice. And Steve Jeppy, my friend who owns the Baltimore Orioles and the world's largest comic book distributorship up in Baltimore, he and I are like brothers because guess what? His daughter wanted me to paint a picture of him and Elvis as buddies in front of his old museum up in Baltimore where Abraham Lincoln came through. That's his museum. But anyway, he is the world's biggest Elvis nut. He said, Ronnie, it's like this: God, family, country, and Elvis, and that's it. I said, Steve, I get it. But he called me the other day and he said, I need to remind you of something. I said, what? And he said, do you realize you have been the voice of the biggest star that's ever been on this planet? I said, I'm going to be honest with you, Steve. I never even thought about that. And he said, you need to think about that. And when he told me that, ever since then, I've been thinking, man, I got to be Elvis's voice in movies and a TV series and a Twilight Zone episode. And Elvis meets Nixon. I was Elvis's voice in the Patsy Cline story. And I've been so blessed. I'm just going to be honest with you, Joe. And everywhere I go, everybody goes, what's Priscilla like? And I go, I don't know, but I know what she don't like because I tried that. I'm just kidding.
A comedian. So you're an artist, and a comedian. So when you said God, family, country, and Elvis, that's your next painting if you haven't painted it, brother.
Yeah, isn't that a great? And Steve, he's 3 months older than me. He grew up like me and you, pure poverty. And look what he is. You're talking about the American dream. My friend Steve Jeppy, my goodness. I mean, and he grew up with nothing like me and you. I mean, I'm from a family of 11. I'm number 7.
Family of 10. Number 10.
Wow. Unbelievable. So I get it and you get it.
Yeah. Well, hey, this is wonderful. Let's talk again. I mean, like I said, we really could go on, but you probably got other things to do. And I want to get this out on the channel so everybody has an opportunity to buy, to watch your show either in person or to watch it virtually for the tour. So if I can get it out today, I'm going to get it out probably about 2:00.
Well, Joe, I appreciate it. And I'm a songwriter. That's how I got into the business. And way before the king is gone, I was writing songs for everybody and his uncle, Roy Drusky, Jeannie Shepherd, Billy Walker, Porter Wagner, the Wilburn brothers. Yeah. And I was having a ball just writing songs. So send me one of your songs. I want to hear. Just Debbie will give you my.
I'll do that. It's funny when you say when all the Jeannie Seely and stuff. I used to go to Rope with Merle Kilgore, the reunion of professional entertainers. Used to go every week with them, or every month, I think it was. And just the nicest people. You mentioned there's several of those actually used to go to that.
Yeah, I just did that about a month ago, the Rope thing.
Okay, still going. Okay. He was the president. I think Merle was the president for a while.
Yeah, and Farron Young, and I forget the other guy that started that. My friend Farron Young. What an interesting character Farron was. But he was
Merle told me stories, so many stories about Farron in the office.
well,
We'll have to talk about.
yeah, most of them I can't tell you now, but I got to tell you this about Merle. So the third show I did, Covington, Tennessee, Jerry Lee Lewis, Hank Jr. I went out to the bus. I knocked on the door. Guess who opened the door? Who was driving the bus? Guess who? Merle Kilgore. I said, Mr. Kilgore, and I loved his songwriting. Wolverton Mountain, Ring of Fire. Are you kidding me? I said, Mr. Kilgore, do you mind if I meet Jerry Lee? And no offense against Hank Jr. I just wanted to meet Jerry Lee Lewis. He said, yeah, son, go back there and knock on the door. They'll be glad to see you. I went back there, and Joe, I heard all this rigmarole. I heard women and all this stuff. And I knocked on the door, and I said, and Jerry Lee goes, who the hell is it? I said, this is Ronnie McDowell. I just want to meet you. Well, the door flew open. Now, here's what happened. I'm going to tell you. And the door flew open, and Jerry Lee put his finger on my nose. And he said, are you a Baptist boy? I said, yes, sir. He said, well, them Baptists ain't worth a damn. And he just started dying out laughing. He said, oh, man, I just cut up with you. That was my introduction to Jerry Lee. And he and I have 2 songs on my new duet album on Curb. Oh, great. And me and Conway got 2. And I wrote a song, and me and Roy Acuff, George Jones, Farron Young, Lynn Anderson, they're all on my new album. Is that not cool?
That's amazing. That's awesome. Well, but thank you for once again being the artist you are and continuing to support the other artists that have been great out there in the world. And you're bringing them back as well, because if we don't talk about them, you know, eventually, there was one Elvis, right?
I know.
You know, and the thing is though, as great as George is, as great as Loretta was, the silence. So we got to keep bringing them back in the forefront of the new fans, of the existing fans. And I do. We keep them alive that way. We keep their spirit alive and their music alive.
Yeah, and just before my friend Mickey Geely died, I wrote a song, and thank God I got him on this song. It's called Looking Back at Me. Unbelievable. And then me and Johnny Rodriguez, I just wrote this new song, and thank goodness I got him on there. It's called There's a Thing About Texas. And I've got all these friends of mine on this album. Billy Joe Royal, who's gone now. John Anderson. I got all my buddies on this album. And Mike Curb's getting ready to put it out. But here's the cool thing. I took Elvis's first song that he ever did, paid $2.50, and he recorded My Happiness.
Yeah.
We were able to take his guitar off because he wasn't playing too good. And we built a whole new track around his vocal. So me and Bill Medley are doing a trio with Elvis on My Happiness. I'll send it to you. You're not going to believe it.
I can't wait.
Play it. I'll send it to you. But Mike Curb, he just bought Sun Records. Mike Curb did.
Okay.
He got permission from Elvis Presley Estate, from Sun Records. The only one that's a holdup is Sony. Well, the Japanese own Sony. So he's waiting. So I cannot wait to have me and Bill Medley and Elvis together on a record. How cool is that?
That's amazing.
Yeah. I'll send it to you.
Sounds good. Well, God bless you. And like I said, I'll put all the links in the description. Go see Ronnie on the 7th. And where you're playing somewhere tonight, right?
Yeah, I'm at the VIP lounge in Ronnie McDowell Facebook Live. They can watch us.
Okay. Yep. All the links will be in the description, everybody. Well, this is Ronnie McDowell and Rare Elvis Photos. Thanks so much for coming on.
Hey, thank you, Joe. Appreciate you.
All right. Take care.
You too. Bye.